Welcome to the DAV Podcast. The battlefield doesn't vanish when the uniform comes off. For countless veterans, the real struggle begins at home, with a silent struggle against invisible wounds. Traditional medicines often fails them, leaving them adrift, searching for anything that offers a sliver of relief. Today, DAV's Rob Lewis talks with Juan, a veteran who found relief in the controversial depths of ibogaine. Her story isn't pretty, but it's real. It's about the desperate search for healing, the power of ritual, and why we can't ignore the potential of plant-based therapies any longer.
Can you share your background and experience as a combat veteran and how your military service impacted your mental health?
So my name is Juan. I served about 13 years in the Army, 10 on active duty, 3 in the Guard. I came in as a 92 Golf or food service specialist. Once I got my citizenship, I went over to 35 November or signals intelligence analyst. During my time at NSA Hawaii, I volunteered for a brand new program called the Cultural Support Team Program back in 2012, I think 2011 at the time. Changed my life for good and, ups and downs, pros and cons. Went through selection, was assigned to Joint Special Operations Command, deployed with JSOC, assigned to a Navy SEAL team. Did about 8 months, 9 months-ish with 2 different SEAL teams and came back. Ended up getting out or leaving active duty shortly after and pursuing art. I would say my military career and what the things that happened during my deployment highly influenced why I sought out psychedelic therapy. I don't think it makes it go away completely, but it definitely has helped me learn how to process and manage, how I respond.
Can you talk a little bit about how that service, which sounds incredibly intense for anyone, how did that impact your mental health?
Yeah, so during my time as a CST or cultural support team leader, I was the only female on the team, right? Brand new program in these very, very challenging, austere locations. And my job, my responsibility was to manage the women and kids on target. I was assigned to the direct action mission, so operating at night, going in and out as quick as I could, or as we could. The things that happened there, I don't want to say I'm not proud of, but there's a lot of moral injury there that I've taken home, and that's where I have my challenges, where I get the flashbacks, nightmares, and still sometimes when I talk about some of the events, especially what happened to some women and children, it's I don't feel too great about what happened. So it's an ongoing journey. Sometimes I'm great, sometimes I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and I'm sorry for that you have to carry that burden. But I tell you, I'm honored to be talking with you today, just to have this opportunity to exchange words. So thank you. So what eventually at some point in time you learn, I'm sure you've probably tried other things first, and you learned at some point in time about ibogaine therapy for your mental health struggles. Can you talk about what that process was like, maybe where you started and then how you ended up with ibogaine?
For a long time, I self-medicated. I think a lot of veterans try to do that. I don't need any help. I got it. And for me, it was either a ton of work or all the substances, alcohol, drugs, you name it, right? And so eventually I reached a super low point where I was like, I can't do this on my own anymore. I really need help. I have never talked to a therapist. I think I should do that. And I started doing that back in 2020. I think that's when I was first introduced to peyote, actually. And that forever changed the way I looked at medicine. The experience, the spiritual reconnection, the way of being, the way of life, just the way the ceremony was. I knew there was a lot more that I could learn and heal from. And then through traditional talk therapy, not through the VA, but through a licensed practitioner, I was introduced to ketamine. But it wasn't in a ritual setting or ceremonial setting. It was very go into an office, get your medicine, process with a therapist. And that's fine. And it has its place and purpose, but I still didn't feel like I got the amount of healing that I needed.
So it sounded like maybe at least a part of the difference between those two experiences. Some of it obviously are the drugs, but some of it is that ritualistic setting, and the other part was more clinical, right? Maybe a bit more sterile, more medical. Do you find that to be important for the healing process?
Oh, absolutely. It's the rituals and the practices that you bring into your life, into your day to day that really make the difference. Really, I mean, you can't do medicine every day. And medicine isn't the cure, it's the entry. It's the portal into the new way of life, the new way of being, the new way of thinking about things that happen to you. Yeah, I take my rituals, prayer, journaling, meditation very seriously, because if without it, I can see myself reverting back to self-medicating.
And then, so let's talk back to ibogaine. You first learned about it. What did you have any initial thought? Like what were your concerns, I guess, before getting into ibogaine, before trying it?
I had started treatment. I've been to a couple of retreats with the Mission Within. And initially with Dr. Martine, I was going through the psilocybin, the DMT, and he was like, no, for what you are carrying, you really need to do ibogaine. And I said, no, I'm nervous. I'm not sure. This seems really intense. And so I put it off for a little bit, maybe like a year or two. But I kept coming back to the medicine, and I felt like I wasn't getting, there was something still like really heavy in me that I was still using, not as heavy, but yeah, I wasn't breaking through. And I started using opiates. I started using opiates every day and just experiencing the withdrawals. It was overtaking my regular day to day. And usually with the other type of substances, that wasn't an issue. But once I started using opiates, I needed something more significant, more effective. And so I went back to Mission Within to ask Martine if he had any openings for ibogaine treatment.
And can you tell me what's the name of the organization where Martine is?
The Mission Within.
Mission Within. Can you talk a little bit about that organization?
So the Mission Within, Dr. Martine Polanco has been leading that, I think, at least 10 years, maybe, or just shy of, but I've been working with them since 2020. They used to work out of Austin and Mexico, but I think it's solely in Mexico now. There's specifically for veterans and spouses of veterans.
Can you talk about the therapy, about that experience? For someone who's never been involved with ibogaine therapy before, what is it like? Can you describe the experience?
Yes, so my treatment in Mexico, we all gather at the house, and it's a beautiful setting. They start the day right before treatment, checking your vitals, doing your just checks and balances of your mental health, your medical history, just making sure you're a good candidate, and that it's safe. From there, the more spiritual aspect happens where you're setting your intention, they're doing a prayer, sage. And then once we're ready for medicine, we go ahead and take it. And we're then brought upstairs where there are these mattresses or beds. There's an eye mat. They give you an eye mask to wear if you'd like. And there's music playing. And the length of your journey it varies, right? Some maybe 4 or 6 hours, not 4, 6 or 7 hours. Mine, for some reason, lasted about 14 hours. And I
That
would say,
that sounds like a long time. And I'm not being
yeah,
judgmental. It just sounds like a long time.
like Martine had predicted,
Yeah.
I needed this medicine. Very intense. And having prior psychedelic experiences with other medicines like psilocybin and peyote, it's the most intense medicine I've ever done.
You say
It's not,
intense. I'm sorry, and I don't want to, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
yeah,
You
yeah,
say
you're fine.
intense though. It's just is it difficult? I mean, it sounds like you're describing almost being born again in some ways. Is it that kind of trauma or that kind of trauma, but that kind of
Mhm.
difficulty?
I don't want to scare anyone off because the results, I would do this 100 times over, but it was very dark for me. It was very dark. Kept feeling like I saw spirits, dark shadows, like kind of like those sleep paralysis demons that were hovering over me, whispering. I kept taking my eye mask off because I thought somebody was like literally on top, and nobody was there. Without the other psychedelics, that you'll see visuals, but it's usually bright and colorful, and um, not this time. It was very dark. I begged in my mind for it to stop.
And 14 hours later, it finally, it's
14
incredible.
hours, yes.
14 hours. Do
And
you
I
feel like
didn't.
you're you're a new person when you come out of that? Or do you feel like what is different about you 14 hours after that first? First of all, I'm sorry, how do you ingest ibogaine?
I don't know how other organizations administer
Yeah.
it, but this method was pill.
And when you came out the other end, I'm sorry to cut you off, that
You're fine.
14-hour experience, you come out the other side, are you a completely different person? How are you different? How have you
Yeah.
changed?
The immediate time after like waking up and finally getting out of the bed, I was out of sorts. I was like, oh my God, what did I just experience? Why was it so dark? Is there something wrong with me? More like introspective, because it was so different from all the other medicines. But I will say, I have not even thought about doing an opiate since then. Not, I couldn't care less about it. And so if I had to go through that experience to be there in that, that kind of mindset, 100% worth it.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard about ibogaine. I've read at
Mm.
least is that it's the kicking another drug is really what ibogaine's strength is. It's different than any other drug, perhaps. Yeah,
Yep.
and did so obviously I'm assuming then that the post ibogaine experience it has affected your day life in positive ways, your relationships. Can you speak to that some?
Yeah, I would say the community, being open to being vulnerable with other people who've gone through the experience, reconnecting with the group that I went with was all women. So reconnecting with the other women and just sharing, especially feeling alone at the time when I was like, oh my God, why was my experience so dark? But others also felt or had that same experience. So like not feeling alone. And now being more open and honest about not relying on the medicines, but turning to these types of medicines and ways of being to heal versus your traditional Western medicine way.
What would you say to other veterans or any individual really who might be struggling with mental health but are hesitant to try something like ibogaine? I'm sure there are folks who are afraid of making that trip to a foreign country, going down to Mexico to take a medicine that's illegal here in the United States. Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share about ibogaine or any of the other non-traditional treatments that you've tried?
I would say there's being more in tune with my spirituality now. And prior to this, I was raised Catholic, fell away from the church. But now I'm understanding that there's a reason that I was introduced to these medicines. There's a purpose behind it. Trust as much as you can, and trust that you'll be in safe hands and good hands. These people who are doing this work, it's not easy. They're not making a ton of money. They're not in it for that. Like the amount of work that goes into each of the individuals at these retreats, I don't know how they're not exhausted. There's a lot to carry and there's a lot of responsibility there. So they're doing it because they feel called to do it.
And looking
So
back over your journey, how do you feel about this? I mean, there certainly is a stigma surrounding alternative therapies like ibogaine, especially maybe in the context of veterans' mental health care. Do you think there should be more openness, more research in this area?
I completely hope that there is, and I push for it. I advocate for it because there's not one tool. There's not one medicine that works for everyone. It should be available for all veterans to at least try, and not be so restrictive or curated to certain demographics that could like afford it or could have the means to travel. Like it should be available here and legal here so that we can help heal veterans.
Amen. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, Sam, those are all the questions I have for you.
Okay.
I know that was quick. Is there anything I guess I would ask? Is there anything that I didn't ask you that maybe you wanted to make sure that you got across today?
I just think I wish more organizations were open to providing this and not only providing the medicine, but a means for veterans to get access to it, right? Like the only way that I was able to get to Mexico, do the mission within was through another foundation called Sabo Foundation. They sponsored me because I wouldn't be able to afford it.
And it seems like, again, I'm going to ask you one more question. Given
Sure.
the issues that we are having as a nation with opioid abuse, that ibogaine would be something that we would want to invest more money in. I mean, to hear you talk, 14 hours of understandably difficult treatment, you came out the other side without a desire to use again. Is that right? I mean, it seems like is that? Do you agree with the question I'm asking? I guess if I'm asking one.
It would be worth the investment. If you really care about the American people, you care about your veterans, why wouldn't you want more access for this type of medicine? I know what I think the answer is.
Can you tell me what you think the answer? I'm curious. What do you think why do you think that we're against those types of drugs?
They don't know how to make it profitable yet. That is the bottom line, unfortunately.
That is unfortunate. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sam's candid account with her experience with ibogaine underscores a critical gap in our current mental health care system for veterans. The darkness she faced and the profound healing she found highlights the urgent need for research and policy changes that prioritize the well-being of those who have served. And as Sam pointed out, the question remains, why are these potential transformative treatments not more readily available? We encourage you to join the conversation, to advocate for change, and to support organizations dedicated in providing veterans with the care they deserve. That's all for this podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening.